the people in this room and those watching are, you have a shared mission that I also believe in very deeply, and that is to take the potential of big data, the potential of technology, and use it to unlock opportunity that, quite frankly, the world needs. The world needs more social benefit that can be achieved. Some of our keynotes illustrated that with incredibly impressive cases. These are practical benefits, not hypothetical. These are applications of complex theories. The benefits to society can include saving lives and, of course, creating jobs, improving economies, which are very important as well. So I'm here to talk about a methodology. In fact, I'm here to talk about a methodology that's mostly focused on the challenge of unlocking that opportunity that we all care about. Because, as many of the speakers said, this is hard. And the speakers presented cases that are wins, but frankly, there are a lot more failures than there are wins. This is an elite group of speakers we heard this morning. It doesn't always go that way. I built this company that to make money, we have to do analysis well. We have to take data assets and turn them into dollars or results when we work for the nonprofit clients. And so really, as a survival imperative, we built a methodology that has helped us a lot. And I'm here to share it very briefly, quite frankly, since I believe I have at a maximum 25 minutes, and if I can finish a little early, that would be something that would be good, apparently, and I'm going to try to do that. So jumping right in here. There we go. I'll briefly introduce myself. I graduated from Harvard in economics, did something predictable, and went to traditional consulting, management consulting, advisory consulting. I could never have spent a lifetime there, but it was a good place to learn. You might call that the prior generation of advisory work. And about 6 years ago, I founded a company that I see as the next generation because it's much more focused on analytics, and yet we have to be strategic. We have to be focused on the business objectives. Specifically, what we do is find and unlock opportunities, not surprisingly, in data. And yet, it's not just about data. It's about people and process and technology and how you use data within the context of all of that, within the context of your operating model, your business model, you might say. There are a few principles that have helped me, and I'll get into this more in the talk. One is to remember Stephen Covey, who wrote the best-selling book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And one of those principles that I live by is to begin with the end in mind. This is hard for technical workers. It's hard for me, quite frankly, and yet it's so important when we're working with big data. We need to start with the end in mind, or we'll be swimming in data forever, unclear what we're trying to do. The other one is that quality is free, and that was Douglas McGregor way back in the 60s thinking about manufacturing. And yet we really need to think about applying that to data science because, quite frankly, these are some of the most complex processes in business and society today, and we need to be rigorous and modular and high quality in the way that we design these processes. One more thing I'll just mention so you understand the context. My company makes most of its money from the private sector, from large corporations. A few that I'm allowed to mention include TD Ameritrade, Citi, Bridgestone Firestone. Most of our money we make from banks, quite frankly, as well as retail. And yet we also work for social entrepreneurs and for nonprofit companies. And frankly, we don't make money on that, but it's the most enjoyable, and it means a lot to myself and my colleagues. So there is this journey, and it can be very long, a journey of 1,000 miles, from data, which can be useless. You cannot deposit data in the bank. You cannot use it to improve results. But you can indeed take it. It's almost like alchemy. You can take your data, make it better. You can perform good analysis, better analysis, and you can turn it into better results. And that's kind of the value chain, although, as you all know, it's much more complicated than those three boxes on that slide. It's worth the trip. I mean, this is something we must do, and when it works, it really works. The problem is that right now there is a huge gap versus the full potential of analytics, of turning data into dollars or other results that matter. There's a gap. There's lots of buzz. You know, it helps marketing. IBM sells a lot of software by talking about everything from Watson to applied analytics to predictive analytics, and that's just one of thousands of companies that benefit from hyping the potential. So in a way, that's good because people are thinking about analytics, but the problem is, and frankly, it's also good because when you perform analytics well, when we get it right, as some of the speakers have shown, the impact can be truly great. I especially liked Alan's example of eBay, and I think you might have some consulting in your future as well. The ugly open secret, and you don't hear this very much in the public, but it's in the background, and I see it even with clients. Frequently they call after they've invested in data, they've invested in technology to make that data valuable, and they're not getting the return on the investment. And frankly, I see that as the majority of the cases, unfortunately. So if you think about that journey of 1,000 miles, 1,000 steps, the idea that the first step is the important one, the saying that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Well, when it comes to turning data into dollars, I think all the steps are important, and it's very important to get to your destination. Otherwise, you don't get any results. Oh, you were very kind. Yes, I think that will help. Thank you. So there is this untapped potential. And yet I think we all have this long-term vision that analytics would become democratized, you might say. Analytics would become pervasive. More people would benefit from analytics. More entities would benefit from analytics. And yet right now, actually, if you were to create some sort of a distribution analysis of all the entities, whether it's individuals, whether it's corporations, whether it's sectors, you would find a huge skew in the benefits of data and how it's used. A relatively small section of the total class of entities would be getting the benefits of analytics, and that bothers me a lot. I think that bothers you a lot. So what are the challenges that are holding us back? I'm going to talk about that for the rest of the discussion here. One is this enigma of progress as the data storage and processing and technology and even the math has progressed. We can do more. The frontier of the possible is expanding, and yet the enigma or the dilemma, the problem this creates is that we need more and more complex processes, more and more talented and educated data scientists, and we have a scarcity of talent. I believe it was the gentleman from, it was Gabriele from Telecom Italia who talked about that scarcity of talent. And frankly, that's what I face a lot. You know, come to a company and they say, well, can we build an analytics team and we help with that? Or can we take our team and get some results, get better results? And really, those are the two ways of solving the problem of, it's the human barrier, if you will. Two ways to solve that problem. One, get more talent, grow it, train it. Two, take the talent that exists and lower the barrier to them being successful versus not successful. Now, we only have a limited amount of time, so I'm only going to talk about that problem. How do we take the staff that we already have, the brains we already have as human beings, and how do we lower the barrier to benefit from our data and how we analyze it, how we transform it? The number one barrier in my belief, and I think we would agree, many of you may agree, that the number one barrier is complexity. If we take all of the different problems or opportunities to which we could and may want to apply data, if we take all of the business models, all the options, imagine multiplying in some sort of a permutation all of the different variations in these 4 areas, it would become overwhelming. We need to find a way to bring simplicity to this to the extent possible. There are other reasons for the problem, and yet all of these will benefit as well if we can reduce complexity to modularity and simplicity to the extent that it's possible. Limited time, so I'll move along. So if complexity is a problem, let's find a way to break through it. I have this strange fantasy that in an alternate universe, Stephen Covey would have dedicated his life to what we are dedicating our life to, transforming data to dollars, to results. And by the way, when I say dollars, I mean value. If you're a company, if you're a non-NGO or a government with a limited budget and you can get results that are 30% greater, well, that's equivalent to having a budget of 30% greater if you had not made that improvement. So if Stephen Covey were an analyst, he would have began with the end in mind. He would have said, what are the points of opportunity? What are the goals here? What are the things I could do and want to do that matter? And to be more specific, he would have said, well, how do we get results in our operating model? How do we get results in our business or in our organization or even as individuals? And he would have said, what's the causality? What's the cause and effect? And finally, he would have said, therefore, where are the points of opportunity? And typically there are many, and he would have pursued that. So the concept here of causal clarity is something we would use. Causal clarity is simply a precise definition of cause and effect within your business model, within your organization. This causes that. If you understand causality and cause and effect, you can create what I call a causal model. And that makes visual, which is helpful, exactly what the drivers are of the results you want. And within that, you have to say, well, what are the drivers we can improve? In the interest of time, I'll show a very simple causal model. When I give longer talks, I often take the time to ask the audience to share a goal, and I create a real-time causal model for them based on their goal. But in essence, we're all familiar with the notion of a business model. Business model is kind of a vague, general term. A causal model is your business model translated into precise causal logic. So here we have a very simple one, frankly speaking. It looks like a P&L statement, each P&L item driving a higher level item until you get to the bottom line, which is your net profit. An example would be here, a point of opportunity, improving the return on marketing spend. Many companies have that problem of not knowing which dollars they spent on sales and marketing generated their results. So the point of opportunity defined here is the efficiency of new client acquisition, the efficiency of getting new customers. For example, in a credit card company, it's typically about $150 per new cardholder, and that's a cost. The key driver or KPI you're influencing is the acquisition cost, and there's a formula there, and you can draw a map. And it looks simple, but in a sense, it's a way to make sure the entire team is on the same page. By the way, this is something that the business needs to do, and yet it creates clarity for the IT and the technologists. So it's a antidote to the problem that I believe Gabrielle of Telecom Italia warned us against, which was, don't just tell them to do analysis, don't just tell them, hey, do big data. Really what you want to say to technologists is, help us make the business better. We think there's an opportunity in this area and probably many others. As an example, if we go back to the case of Alan Mislov, there's a point of opportunity implied there to present to users on eBay, hypothetically, a better metric, a better piece of information than the star ratings that they present today. How much better would it be if you presented a fraud rating, a fraud recommendation? And in fact, it would without a doubt influence their business model. So Stephen Covey, or now me and my company, and hopefully some of you, would begin with the end in mind and say, okay, let's start at the top here. Your point of opportunity is a decision you need to make, perhaps repeatedly, perhaps one time, or a process you want to make better, perhaps one that you make thousands of times that's worth a few pennies if you do it right, or just once a day or once a quarter. But in any case, work backwards from that and say, okay, what information would allow me to optimize that process? So again, the eBay example, what information would allow me to optimize the decision about whether to buy something? I want customers to be confident at eBay, then they'll buy more. Once I've defined the insights I need, the information I need, I can finally say, okay, I'll work backwards from that and write my analytic requirements, you might say. And based on my analytic requirements, my data requirements. What's good about that, too, is it narrows the focus without oversimplifying on only the data I need. The big data gets smaller, not necessarily tiny, but we want it to be as simple as it can be without being any simpler than it needs to be. And at that point, well, I've got this data, I have this analytics plan, I'm going to use certain methods. What tools and platforms will I use? And there you have it. The key takeaways, and I'm almost done, which is probably good for the calendar and the schedule here, is number one, begin with your business model. That's how you make money. Or begin with your operating model if you're not on the profit space. If you're an NGO, maybe you have a theory of change. In a way, that theory of change needs to be specific enough that you could draw a picture of it. Thomas Davenport wrote what's probably the first bestseller about analytics, and he has a quote in that book where he says, he describes the CEO of a casino as having a little sign on his desk that says, "In God we trust, all others bring data." And frankly, that seems good, but not complete to me, because showing up with data can be priceless, or it can be useless. So what I would put on my desk is bring a clear causal statement, bring a recommendation that makes me money, and be able to explain why. Identify points of opportunity, define the information that you would need, and keep the analysis as simple as possible. Now, I do want to just dwell on that for a second, and then I'll be done and ready to move to questions. This sounds very linear, what I'm describing, and I do want to clarify, especially at a conference like this, I don't mean for a second to suggest that the future of big data innovation is linear, and in fact, we don't use this linearly. What we do, and I think this is very important, is create something that folks can understand, and folks understand linear. I believe that it was Alessandro who presented incredibly complicated analysis, and it needed to be complicated to be able to predict disease migration in today's high mobility society. And yet at the end, he presented a way of thinking about this that involved a single variable. What would happen if we reduced global travel by 50%? I can imagine that in a causal model, which is to say, reduce travel, you will get some result, we know we'll get some result in terms of slower transmission. But how much of a result? What is the sensitivity? What is the impact? It turns out that would only delay just a little bit the transmission of the disease. And at the same time, it would have a huge economic cost. And that would allow you to say, okay, economic cost, that's in my model as well. Is that worth it as a society, as a globe, as a group? And the answer, no, it's not worth it. And so I see that as an example of having a linear model that is interoperable with a complex system model. And when we get into more advanced analysis that does require machine learning, what we try to do is say, okay, let's define the goal first, and then Let's design the analysis, and the analysis may indeed be a complex system, completely nonlinear situation. So I think the main thing I would ask at this point is, this conversation's too short. Let's stay in touch. This is my contact information, and really appreciate this opportunity to learn from you today. Thank you.